All right, welcome back to the Hunt and Harvest Health podcast. Today's podcast is actually going to be a talk that I did in 2020 at the Western Hunting Summit. I have a ton of content from the Western Hunting Summits over the last many years, and I realized probably just need to utilize them. Lots of great information, and this one especially I'm putting out because it's not really a two-parter, but it's going to seem like a two-parter. At the end of this, if you can go all the way to the end of this talk, there is someone who was an attendee that year that had written me a very nice email about some changes he had made in his life and how this Hunt and Harvest Health podcast, had helped him to do that. And so the next podcast after this one will be his story. So when I went back and listened to these old talks, I thought, geez, I should really get Ryan on the podcast. And I'll talk more about that in the intro for the next podcast, but you can go listen to that. We just finished up our gritty giveaway last night. Thank you to everybody who participated in that. We will be announcing the winner soon. For the big giveaway where we're giving away a Western Hunting Summit spot. Just in case you might still be wondering, we do have some archery elk spots left for this year's Western Hunting Summit. So if that's something you're still thinking about, head over to westernhuntingsummit.com. I took a week off because I took a well-deserved and needed vacation to Costa Rica with some of my girlfriends. And I had never been there before. Absolutely loved it. We'll definitely go back again and spend a lot of time in the sun and just relaxing and not working, which is very difficult for me to do. So that's why I took a week off and just had some downtime. Make sure that you go to the show page for this, go to the show notes, either in iTunes, Spotify, on the website, wherever you listen to this podcast at, and support our sponsors. We have a number of partners and sponsors and people that help us keep this podcast going. So you can also go to StHealthyHunter.com, and there we have a partners page, and all of our partners are on that. And feel free to support them. We also have any affiliate codes or anything that you can use to get discounts if it's available. So please check that out. Podcast is me at the Western Hunting Summit talking about kind of general health, the immune system. And I want everybody to realize too, we recorded this in 2020. So there is some COVID talk. This is back really when everything just had hit the fan. This was June of 2020. Not long after we had all kind of gotten out of quarantine, at least here in Montana. So take that with a grain of salt, but and then hopefully you'll get to listen to the next podcast as well with Ryan Raitt. All right, enjoy.
Obviously, Dr. Hillary. How many of you listen to the podcast? Okay, cool. Thank you. It's a lot of work to put out a podcast, and so thank you for listening. Thank you all for being here. This is a big deal for Ryan and I, so we want to say thank you in more ways than one. We really appreciate you taking your time, your money, your Father's Day away from your children today to be here learning with us. And I did want to say, so let me see if I can do this right here. I did want to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads in here. Being a dad is really important. I was fortunate enough to have 2 dads in my life, but it's a big job. It requires a lot of emotional maturity and wisdom. And as a parent, you know, we're all just kind of doing what we can do. But happy Father's Day to you guys. And also, if you're here, it probably means that you have a partner who allowed you to be here today so that you could better yourself and hopefully in turn better them. So I want to thank them because those are usually the silent people in the background who are making things happen. So let's give them some thanks too, okay? So today, other thing I want to say too, I want to say Happy Father's Day to my husband because he is really the epitome of a father to us. He's got 2 girls, which he always wanted a boy, and then we had a girl, and then we had another girl, and now he just loves girls, and he just wants more girls. Unfortunately, I'm too old, so I won't be having any more girls, but he's a great dad, and he works really hard to provide a very healthy, meaningful life for us. And so as you all met our kids this weekend, this is when they were a little littler and cuter in our garden in Washington. But these 2 are really our purpose for sharing our message, and we hope that you can take that home and share it with your children as well. Okay? All right, so honestly, I didn't really even know what in the heck I was going to talk about till like last night when I got home. If you were here last year, some of it's going to be a repeat, but it's going to be different. Last year, I was kind of like, okay, we need to talk about science and mechanisms, and that's because that's the world I come from. And I got you guys all after lunch last year, so everybody was like, and afterwards, Ryan's like, it was good, but it's a little, So I think this year I'm just going to share a few things. I'm going to share things that I think after having met all of you and having some of you talk to me, knowing some of your health stuff and kind of the age group that we're in here, I think we're going to touch on things that I think are most important to the age group and to what I've learned in the last few days from you guys. And so we'll go over a few things, and then I got a few different things we'll go around, and we'll talk about ladies too, so I don't need to leave the ladies out. Yes. Okay, so just a little history. This is me and Ryan on our very first date here on the left. That was us after we got married on a lake. Ryan was a fly fishing guide. If you didn't know, he used to teach people fly fishing. So this was the lake that we used to do that on, and a photographer thought it would be a cool idea. So we sat in that boat that was sinking, literally. My dress was soaked with water. And we fly fished and took those pictures. And, Ryan and I don't really have a whole lot of staged pictures together. It's just not our lifestyle. I don't hire a photographer every 6 months to come and take pictures of our family on the porch with the perfect dresses, because that's just not us. But I just treasure those pictures because, those are 23 years old. We got married 23 years ago last weekend. And was it last weekend, babe? The weekend before, the 7th, something like that. And it's great to see those. And then this was us when we were 19 years married. We flew to Hawaii with our kids, and we had a private ceremony on the beach, and we got remarried. So this was the wedding we really loved. This wedding was the big hoopla on the family and the dresses and all that. But it's been great. So we come from really humble beginnings. I grew up in Bozeman. I was one of the fortunate unicorns back in the 80s that got to live here as a kid. And of course I left because it was boring as hell. There was nothing going on here except the great outdoors and everything you could possibly want if you loved nature. When I met Ryan, he was in Alaska, and he was from Washington, Snohomish area. And he could not believe that I would ever leave this place. What is wrong with me? Unfortunately, it took us 26 years to get back here, but we are. So just a little history about us and kind of where we started. This is, besides hunting, this is Ryan's other love. So he has hunting, gardening, me, well, my kids, and then me. And the dogs might go before me a little bit, but I don't know. And I say that with love because he's one of those guys that he likes, I don't call him hobbies because he will get mad at me if I use that word. He calls it a lifestyle. So hunting and gardening, really a lifestyle that we've adopted. But when I met Ryan in 1995, as that young 21-year-old kid, health wasn't really a big topic He wasn't like healthy. He wasn't into that stuff. But I was, because I was sick as a teenager. I was really interested in health, and that was my mission in life and my purpose very early on. So when we met, I kind of brought in the hippie, and he grew up in a very conservative hunting and fishing family where like reading your chakras and growing long hair was not really cool, okay? And we started living together and all the time. But one thing we loved was nature. And so that's where we bonded through. And then Ryan just started getting in. I loved food and I loved cooking healthy food. And then both our parents were big gardeners. Ryan's dad was a huge gardener. Like, he would go over to Ryan's house and his dad, whose name is Ray. Ray, are you here somewhere? Here you are, Ray. He would just like force feed you food. I grew this peach and this peach. I like blended it with this other plant and I put it together and it grew this thing, and like force feed you this peach. You know, he's so into his plants, and me and Ryan would be like, whatever. That's basically how Ryan is now. He'll come in, he'll be like, oh my gosh, look at this tomato. And you know, so what we do every day is we look out on our garden here compared to what we had in Washington, and we probably want to cry a tear because it's really hard to garden here. The wind is 80 miles per hour and killing our tomatoes out there. So, but this was where we started, and this is what we did we've done Hunt Harvest Health now since 2016. But prior to that, this was our lifestyle. And it's still our lifestyle. It's just that we decided to share it. The big thing that I think is really important, and the reason that you are all here, is because Ryan made a decision to share what he knew. And I've always been really outspoken. I'm basically an extrovert. I don't mind talking. I love sharing information. Ryan has worked really, really, really hard. You guys don't even know. It's like so hard to be here, to be providing this education for you, to get out of his shell and to mentor and share what he knows. Because really he had very few friends, very close to his family, and he loves to solo hunt. And if you're a solo hunter, you like being alone. And you don't like a lot of people around. And you have even a hard time with one or two hunting partners. So his hunting partner was his cousin or his dad, and that was it. So when I saw the potential through Instagram just for people sharing things, I convinced him to start an Instagram page. And that's why you're all here today, because he just slowly started sharing these things with you. And not just about hunting, but he knows a lot about plants. He knows a lot about nature. He knows how to track animals. He is patient. He's super patient. And of course, as you all know, he's a great hunter. But that's because he's worked on these skills over his whole entire lifetime, and he's really willing to change. And I think today what we're going to talk about, I think that's what you all have to remember. And you wouldn't be here if you weren't into growth, learning, getting better. You know, people that are the best, they learned. They started down here and they learned. You know, whether you had your father as your mentor or you have someone like Mark or Ryan or Brian Barney as your mentor, you know, you got to start somewhere. And so the fact that you're here and you're looking for this says that you care about that. And unfortunately, that's a very small % of the population, okay? And in the hunting industry, this is a very rare thing, okay? I am not a hunter, so I will profess to know nothing about hunting. But I live with a hunter, a guy who literally eats, breathes, sleeps, dreams. We'll all share our dreams. What do you think Ryan dreams about? There's an animal every dream. And maybe he's in a mountain every dream. Like, it's just who he is. So I really eat, live, and breathe hunting, okay? Sometimes I'm not really happy about it, but most of the time I am nowadays. And so I would say that we all have to start somewhere, but the fact that you're all here, you want to grow. And so with your health, it's kind of the same thing. You can't really separate like these things these guys are teaching you this weekend from these. And that's my own personal opinion. You don't have to believe that. But as you saw in Dan's workout yesterday, Like if you think being separate, like fitness is separate from hunting, like you're crazy, right? Like it's not going to work out for you. Or maybe you're a horse guy or you're a llama guy. I don't know.
You still gotta hike up their hill.
Well, I will give Mark a break because Mark was like an ultra marathon runner for years and years. And you're going to learn about Mark today. Mark's talk today that you're going to get was our number one talk last year, okay? So I'm just going to warm you guys up. Mark's going to come up here and probably give you all the stuff you really want. But he was an elite athlete, okay? So he gets a pass. He can have llamas now. He deserves them. Okay, so let's just get into a few things, and then we'll get into some fun stuff. So, oh boy, have we heard about the immune system lately? Have we just been beat to death with the immune system? Maybe you've really been in a hole somewhere and you haven't been in the media, but quarantine was all about there's a deadly virus out there that if you get exposed to it, you may die, which is like a big deal. I mean, the flu is the same thing. Like, you could die from a lot of things. You could die from getting in your car and, getting hit at the stoplight here. So, but the immune system is basically your defense mechanism and your system that detects what's good and what's not, like for your entire life. And what's miraculous about this is if you think about an average lifespan, about how long a human being lives typically, whether that's women, we live longer, like by a couple years, but 70, 80, now people 90, this is like a long time, okay? We live a long time. And immune systems do this throughout your entire life. Now this is just all the cells of the immune system. And I'm not gonna go through every single one of them because that was this, okay? You don't want that. But this is the most complex, enhanced system on the planet. Not even a computer can replicate this, okay? So this is what's going on in your body every single second of the day. Today, the reason your quads hurt and your shoulders hurt and your back hurts from that workout yesterday or from that hike the day before, your immune system's cleaning up all the crap that you created, breaking down that muscle tissue, and it's cleaning that up right now, okay? So your immune system right now is doing that, and you're building lactic acid and you're building waste product. So there's a byproduct, there's like an end result of having an immune system, a few end results. But one is it's got to clean house. And so it's got to do that consistently. You are constantly creating waste and your body has to get rid of it, okay? So the big thing is, why do some people get these diseases and die and some people don't? Why do some people's immune systems never catch something and other people's do? Why is COVID asymptomatic in some people and some people end up on ventilators? Or worse. Now we do know with COVID that if you have pre-existing conditions, which is comorbidities, which is probably other words you've heard a lot of lately in the media, you have a higher rate of death. And that's because we're finding that COVID, based on a lot of the mechanism that works with, especially with ACE receptors, especially in the lungs, but other tissues as well, is that COVID has an affinity for those. Now, people that tend to have lots of cardiovascular disease and metabolic disease and or they're on certain medications that ACE inhibitors, blah, 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 right? But the majority of people dying are older and they are not well, okay? And you'll hear this one thing in the media, ooh, a child got it, or somebody who was 40 died of perfect health. If you actually read the article, that person had type 1 diabetes, okay? Type 1 diabetes is not perfect health. I hate to break that to you. That's an autoimmune condition where your pancreas does not make insulin. You cannot live without insulin, therefore you have to inject it. Most type 1 diabetics have poorly managed diabetes because their endocrinologist never properly taught them how to use insulin. So they're high and low, high and low, high and low their whole life. And then their kidneys slowly go, you know what I mean? So a type 1 diabetic struggles, probably since childhood, to have a healthy immune system based on insulin. So that death was not of a totally healthy person, okay? Now, I hate to break it to you, the age demographic here, how many people over 40? That's more than half of the people in here. You are now headed into the best years of your life, where you feel the best in your brain, but your body just kind of does this, okay? And if you don't take care of yourself, it's even worse, right? And you probably have, now, I will tell you, I look around when I met all of you, and I've seen all of you exercise, and I've hung out with you. This is a pretty healthy group of older people, okay? If you guys would be more that subset of the population that's not typical of what we are seeing in the rest of the population, okay? Over 70% of the US population is overweight and or obese. That means 70%, okay? If you are obese, you have low-grade inflammation. If you have low-grade inflammation in your body, even if you're 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight, you have low-grade inflammation. And we're going to talk about inflammation in a minute. But comorbidities are really important. But this, you guys are in the age group where it's really important to take care of yourself, okay? If you're under 40, if you're between 20 and 30, it's really important to take care of yourself because you're going to be this old someday. It's going to happen, hopefully, by the grace of God. You're going to end up old in your 40s, okay? So you got to take care of yourself. Inflammation, again. Inflammation is what your body does, again, to heal that quadricep tissue that you broke down yesterday. You need inflammation. Inflammation brings in those immune cells, those white blood cells, and says, hey, we got something here you need to build and clean out and get rid of. So inflammation is actually what your body does all the time, and we hear a lot about it in a negative sense, but you need inflammation to start the process of immune reaction. The problem is we have kind of chronic low-grade inflammation because we have so much metabolic disease and stuff like that. So inflammation is part of it, but we want to kind of learn how to curb inflammation and to help our body clean out that stuff. And that's what we'll talk about today with food a little bit and stuff. And then this is just some facts about chronic inflammation. Pretty much everything you do in your daily life is going to cause inflammation, right? Let's see here. Exercising, breathing, eating food. Okay, why breathing? Well, breathing, you breathe in oxygen, you breathe out CO2 gas. You have a pH regulation that goes on in your lungs, goes on in your tissues all the time. If you get too acidic, if you get too alkaline, your body starts to try to figure pH out. There's going to be inflammation going on there, okay? Eating, every time you eat, your immune system, your gut, 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So you want to trash your immune system, just eat a horrible diet all the time. Number one. And what are 70% of Americans doing? Eating a horrible diet all the time. Not only are they eating a horrible diet, it's laden with pesticides, herbicides, plastics, phthalates, and you guys are taking the hit for all the chemicals in the environment, okay? And we'll talk about hormones in a minute, but we've seen it in boys, younger and younger. We're seeing it in utero, we're seeing it in cord blood. Babies born today have hundreds of chemicals in their cord blood, okay? And boys are very sensitive to excess estrogens. And estrogen mimickers are super high in our environment right now, okay? So again, you are constantly having to fight all these things all the time, even if you don't know it. If you drive a diesel truck, which Ryan loves his diesel truck, he loves the smell of it. Just see, who loves the smell of diesel? I think it's a genetic thing. It's a weird genetic detox mechanism. Now, maybe you can detox diesel easily. So you like that smell. Your body's okay with it. My little one's the same way. She's like, oh, I love the smell of Daddy's truck. Now, if Ryan starts his truck, like in the winter here, you know, it's 40 below. He starts his truck and he leaves the garage door open. Like, the truck's outside. It's not in the garage. The cold air like sucks towards the warm air, and I could literally be in my bathroom and get out of the shower, and it's as if the warm air sucks the diesel through the windows into the bathroom. And I'm like, Okay, so I'm super sensitive to it. That smell makes me headachy, nauseous, sick. Some people love it and they don't get that reaction, but think if you're like an airline pilot or you're a truck driver or whatever. You are constantly, we all are, we go to the gas station, we pump gas. I mean, we're all exposed to that. So that's creating oxidant damage as well. And I test a lot of people, you can do tests now. Most everybody has high levels of derivatives of gasoline in their blood, even the healthiest people. So basically what do we need? We need antioxidants. So we went through some of this, inflammation, and I'll give you guys all this if you want it. Okay, so let's get to the juicy stuff. Everyone wants to talk about hormones, and typically with guys, you guys want to talk about like one hormone. What is it? Yeah. Do you ever hear women walking around going, oh my God, I need to talk about my estrogen. Do you want to talk about estrogen? No, women are like, yeah, estrogen's a hormone, but there's something about testosterone, and I think it's because it's such a powerful influence in a man's life. But these are all your hormones, okay? So you don't just have testosterone, guys. You got a lot of hormones going on here. And testosterone working appropriately is totally dependent on insulin. It's dependent on growth hormone. Let's see. Oh gosh. Luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. Yes, men actually have follicle stimulating hormone, which is what tells us whether or not a woman is going to ovulate or if she's menopausal. But you also have that as well, because that tells us how is your brain talking to your testes, right? LH, are you making testosterone? That's luteinizing hormone. So men and women, here's the thing. Women are more complicated because they have more, no, they're really not. It's just the way that they metabolize their hormones. So the reason that McKenna is a woman is because she takes most of all her testosterone and turns it into estrogen. You, Nate, turn a very little bit of your testosterone into estrogen, okay? You still need estrogen, and you do have estrogen, and you have a Y chromosome too, so that's a little thing too, that would make you men. But so it's the same biochemical pathway for men and women. It's just that men do it differently than women. The problem where estrogen comes in is that because you take testosterone naturally and you aromatize it into estrogen, if you're exposed to a lot of estrogens, it's as if you're just bypassing that and now you're getting a bunch of estrogen, and testosterone kind of gets like a competitive inhibition, right? It's like, well, wow, we got a lot of estrogen going. We don't need to make more testosterone because that's going to make more estrogen, and the body kind of knows that. And so when we do hormone replacement therapy, guys always have this idea that, well, it's all that testosterone that's making them aggressive and angry and violent. No, that's estrogen. So now you know what a woman feels like pretty much every month of her life, okay, is when your estrogen gets too high, you're crying at commercials and you want to punch your hand through a wall, okay? So we know when we do HRT, we got to be careful with the guy's estrogen. We got to find a happy place, because if his estrogen's too high, he's going to have problems. There used to be this theory then, if you do hormone replacement with a guy because you don't want him to have all this estrogen, estrogen's bad for men, let's give him an anastrozole, or what we call an AI, an aromatase inhibitor. It slows down that enzyme that converts to estrogen. Give him that when you give him testosterone. Well, it can drop your estrogen really low. And what happens to a guy that doesn't have enough estrogen? He's depressed and he's got erectile dysfunction. So he's coming to you to get on hormones, and you just made him depressed and gave him erectile dysfunction. You think he's happy with you? No. So again, you need a little bit of estrogen, and it's a balance. So let's see, what's another really important hormone on here that you guys are interested in? How about thyroid hormone? Okay? Truth. If you don't have enough thyroid hormone, you won't make babies. You will not make enough sex hormones to be fertile, okay? So again, testosterone isn't the only thing, and in women, it's not just estrogen. If your thyroid hormone is not working appropriately, one, you're gonna be exhausted. Your hair's gonna thin. You're gonna gain weight. Your brain's gonna be slow. You're gonna have low libido. You're maybe going to have skin issues. Your skin's going to be dry and cracking. You're going to be cold, okay, all the time. If you have any of those symptoms, you might think, oh, it's my testosterone's low. It actually might be your thyroid's low, okay? So we check those things. Thyroid is really important. And again, thyroid is a hormone today that is being screwed with. And it's higher in women. Typically, it's autoimmune thyroid in women, but I'm seeing it more in men. And typically, we don't see these things in men. So again, I think it's exposures. Just having done so many blood tests and seen that. Let's pick one more that you guys... Oh, cortisol. Okay. So actually, cortisol is probably most of your problems. Okay? It's a stress hormone that's secreted on a circadian rhythm. Do you know what that means? Okay, so you have an hourly, a daily, a monthly, a yearly circadian rhythm. Okay, we know what the year circadian rhythm is. You have seasons, right? We all have seasons. We do that. It's hunting season. It's not hunting season. That's my household. Okay, that's our circadian rhythm. Or it's gardening season. It's not gardening season. But no, what that means is that on a daily basis, you secrete cortisol. So cortisol should go up when you get out of bed. You wake up. Within 30 to 60 minutes, cortisol should go up. At 60 minutes, that's the highest your cortisol is going to be all day. And then naturally, just slowly go down, and at the end of the day, you're asleep. Okay? Well, today, we have so much perceived stress. What that means is people are just stressed out for everything. They think about everything. They can't get the hamster wheel to quit running. They have a lot of bills to pay. They got 5 kids. They got 2 businesses. You've got to realize that your cortisol is competing with testosterone. Your cortisol is competing with estrogen. Why do women, when they go through menopause, get the spare tire around their waist? Because now they have no estrogen, and their cortisol just keeps being secreted. And cortisol gives you the donut, okay? So if you can look at yourself right now and you have a donut, you need to work on your stress. You need to work on your adrenals. And you do need to work on your hormones as well because they play in together. But cortisol is, and it's also intricately tied into thyroid hormone. So one way I can test your cortisol release pattern, you spit in these little things. If from your waking to 60 minutes, you have this like straight up, like you just hiked 4,000 feet elevation in 60 minutes, okay? And after that, you just, those are the people that come in and they're like, my day sucks. I have no energy. Like, I can't think straight, you know, et cetera, et cetera. They have thyroid problems because their thyroid is not regulating, their hormone cannot basically regulate their cortisol. And so they get that spike in the morning, and then the rest of the day, they're just done. And they're probably not sleeping at night. They probably have insomnia. Another one to think about here is melatonin. So melatonin you need, it's when cortisol goes down, melatonin goes up. So if you can't get your cortisol down, you will not get your melatonin up. Therefore, you won't get tired and you won't go to bed at night. Or you'll be waking up in the middle of the night. Okay? So these are hormones. Insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone. This is back to cardiometabolic disease. This is the #1 killer. And again, the age demographic here, cardiovascular disease is going to kill the majority of you in this room, okay? I hate to say that, but it's true. And when you combine insulin resistance with it, it's like double whammy, okay? So what does insulin resistance mean? If you can't regulate your insulin, your cell can't pull glucose into the cell. That workout that we did yesterday, you need glucose to get into the cell, or you have a lot of energy issues, okay? So when you eat a carbohydrate, it turns into glucose. Insulin's like the guard at the gate that opens the gate and says, come on in. You just keep eating tons of sugar, tons of garbage, tons of this kind of stuff. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Eventually, insulin's like, yeah, whatever. I don't got time for this. In the beginning, insulin's like, oh my gosh, there's so many of you tourists. I can't take you all in. Come on, come on. And then it gets overwhelmed. And then it's like the guys at Buckingham Palace. You just stand there and don't do anything but stare into the distance. They don't even open the gate for you. They just stand there. And so you become insulin resistant. Then you have too much sugar in your blood, and then you get diabetes. Okay, now, if you're of normal weight, you can have diabetes. You can have insulin resistance. You can look great. You can be tons of muscle, whatever. You can still have insulin resistance. And so sometimes it's genetics. If you have a lot of diabetes in your family, you need to be careful. And it's not a joke. Like, you really need to be careful, because I see it all the time. Really fit guys coming in with really whacked out blood sugars, high hemoglobin A1C, high insulin, insulin resistance, okay? So, and it starts really young. So this is why you need to feed your children healthy food, okay? Like, I'm not even kidding, because this starts really young. And so does cardiovascular disease. It starts really young, really, really young. Okay, so this is modern diet versus ancestral diet. This is what we eat in our diet. This is what our ancestors ate. These were the carbohydrates our ancestors ate. Okay? It's just the amount of carbohydrate density that we're getting nowadays, and that's why we're seeing more insulin resistance. It's also decreased exercise, decreased activity over time. Yeah. I know you can't see it. So this is like rice cake. The rice cake is the absolute highest carbohydrate density. I don't know what that is. Protozoa? Pretzels? Oh, I was like, a protozoa? Who's eating protozoas? And then you have chicken at the bottom. Chicken, beef, lamb, pork, eggs, kale, cheese. Look, kale's on here, Ryan. Ryan loves kale. Turnips, nuts, vegetables, all this. And then, well, we'll have a little white rice today, okay? We had some hamburger buns last night. Like, once in a while, it's okay. But if you're eating 3 meals a day of white rice and bread and pretzels and rice cakes, which you think are super healthy, and you give them to your kids because they're rice and they're super healthy, well, that's fine once in a while. But if it's all the time, it's a lot of carbohydrate. Sugar intake, that's a no-brainer. We eat a lot of sugar. Okay, so let's just get to a few things. Do you guys want to actually know what you want your doctor to run on you if you go to them? So the biggest problem that I get, guys come in and they're like, well, I went to my doctor. Okay, first of all, who in here gets regular medical exams? Okay. It's mostly the older guys, because they probably, you know, and you do too, that's good, that's good. But the younger guys, what I notice with men is men do this thing where they have a certain age that they start not feeling quite well, right? When you're young, you feel good. You don't think about it, or you don't feel good and you just don't know what it feels like. Like, I don't know, like most people, you know, women are the same way. But women have ceremonies from the age of 12 to like 52. Every single month. Women have babies. Women get pregnant. Women breastfeed. We have all the fun invasive exams done to us pretty much throughout our entire life. So we go to the doctor more. We raise children typically. Our kids get sick. You know, if your kid gets sick, are you the first one to be like, oh my God, they're sick, we gotta go to the doctor? No, it's probably your wife, and she's probably taking them while you're at work. So women are in the healthcare model, they consume most of the healthcare dollar, and that's because women are typically in charge of that stuff, just by the nature of it. Men kind of do this like, I'm fine, I don't need to go to the doctor. I don't need to go to the doctor. Oh, I hate those doctors. They're just going to give me drugs. I don't want to go to those doctors. And then stuff starts going downhill, and then your wife says, what the hell is wrong with you? You need some help. Go see somebody. And so they come in and they're like, well, I mean, I feel okay. You know, most of the time. Well, not really. I mean, I sleep like 2 hours a night. And I eat a bag of potato chips, and it's also, you know, 12 o'clock, and yeah, you know, I'm stressed out. You know, this is how guys are. They just don't talk about that, and they sure as hell don't want to talk about that with a stranger they don't even know, and it's probably somebody who's going to spend 5 minutes with you. And that's the other thing with guys. You guys need, like, you guys are like engineers. Your brains aren't like women, you know, typically from what I've experienced with men. They want to understand the mechanism, and they want to know why they're doing what you're telling them to do. And if I just give you a medication and I don't even explain your blood work to you and why I'm giving you this, what do you think the compliance is going to be of a guy taking that medication? Almost zero. And unless you were born like in the 1920s to 1940 bracket, because those guys and women, doctors were very respected. And when you went to your doctor, I mean, how many of you had grandparents that were on polypharmacy like this, and they don't even know what the hell they're for? My doctor told me to take it. I don't know what that's for. Oh, is that my cholesterol medication? I don't know. So it's changing now because people are like, well, I heard drugs are bad for me. I shouldn't be doing that, blah, blah, blah. But they're not getting any advice. Their doctor's like, eat healthier. Eat healthier. That list we had up there, people think a rice cake is eating healthier. You know, you got to actually coach people and help them. And unfortunately, the medical system is just not set up to do that. So here's the thing, guys. If you want to know more about yourself biochemically, and gals, so this actually applies, the hormones are a little different, but everything else applies to both sexes. Here's the tests you want to do. CBC. Who can tell me what a CBC looks at? And the doctors can't reply. Well, he's a vet, and I'm sure he knows what a CBC is. Yeah. Animals aren't that much different from us. So CBC looks at your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets. And it also looks at the size of them, the shape of them, how colorful they are, I guess you could say, and how you're clotting. Now, the CBC is like a $5 blood test, and it is the most important blood test you can do because if you're seeing problems in a CBC, this is not a good thing. That means it's so deep now, it's in your red blood cell, or it's in your white blood cell. And what are white blood cells? Go back to the immunity. They are the defense mechanism of your thing. So if you're getting a viral infection or bacterial infection, you come in, your CBC's off, your white blood cells are off, it's probably going to reflect that. If you have cancer, it could reflect that. If you have anemia, if you have genetic hereditary risk factors, it will show that. If you're not going to clot well and your platelets are a mess, it's going to show that. So this is the first and most important, cheapest test you need, okay? Next one is Chem Panel. Now, I'm not going to write everything that's in a Chem Panel, but I'll just tell you. One is glucose, fasting glucose. Why do you need to know your fasting glucose? Insulin resistance, okay? I will tell you that if you struggle with high fasting glucose, you need to get a glucose monitor. You need to do it at home. Because glucose, if you had a big Italian spaghetti dinner the night before and you fast and you get your blood drawn in the morning, your glucose might be high still, okay? So depending on how you actually metabolize carbohydrate, but it has fasting glucose. It looks at your electrolytes, okay? That's pretty important. Electrolytes, your cell can't function without sodium, potassium, chloride, okay? So it looks at that. It looks at your liver enzymes. Liver enzymes are really important. If you're going to do hormone, if you're going to do hormone replacements, if you have exposures at work, if you are an alcoholic and you drink too much, liver enzymes tell us a whole lot about you. So we want to know liver enzymes. And then it looks at all your kidney markers. Liver and kidney, again, really important. Why? Because you got to detoxify and eliminate waste through those organs. So those are really important. And then it looks at your blood proteins, your blood calcium. If you don't got enough calcium or you got too much or not enough potassium or this and that, you could have heart failure, okay? Or you could have an arrhythmia or these kind of things. So these are important. Again, it's super cheap panel, a super cheap test that you need to know. Okay, so if we want to get deeper, we look at vitamin D. And in Bozeman, and this latitude, Seattle, probably 80% of the, 90% of the population is low. Deficient is under 30. And I would probably, if I took all your blood in here, I bet you 80% of you are under 30, okay? So you've also heard about vitamin D a lot in the media lately. Vitamin D is showing to be protective against things, especially COVID. Okay, and you want your vitamin D to be 60 or higher, 60 to 100, and most people come in between 20 and 30.
Native Indians, before white man came to North America, they were taking
You know why? I know I was going to talk about that if I had time, but it's nutrient-dense food. So if you don't want to take vitamin D, you need to be taking cod liver oil, eating eggs, eating butter, eating nutrient-dense animal foods if you want vitamin D. That's why. They were eating organs. So you want liver. If you like organs, organs are the most nutrient-dense. And this is kind of what shocks me in this community. Dude, you guys are killing the best meat on the planet and you're not harvesting the organs. You're leaving them behind. So you're leaving the liver behind. You're leaving, well, my husband doesn't leave the heart. He always brings the heart home. Kidneys, adrenals, bone marrow, fat, like, what's it called, tallow? Like all these things, you guys are just leaving there. For the animals, they're getting all the organs, and that's where they're getting their vitamin A, their vitamin D, their vitamin E. You need those super rich, fatty foods for these things. So take your organs home. Yeah. And if you can, take your bones home and make bone broth out of them. Okay, what's the next one? B12. B12 is really important for the nervous system. It's important for the heart. It's important in anemias. So a lot of times, especially in guys, if your CBC is off, your red blood cells are off, you may be B12 and or folate deficient. And where do you find B12 and folate high in foods? Nutrient-dense organ and animal foods, okay? Liver, all those kinds of things. Again, our ancestors ate a ton of organ foods. I mean, our grandparents ate a ton of organ foods, right? They didn't have supplements. And they just knew when you ate liver, like my mom has horror stories of her mother making her eat liver. So she never made me eat liver, you know, but liver's disgusting. I don't want to eat liver. But you can take your liver and you can dehydrate it, or you can cut it up. You can put it in little pills. You can swallow it. And it's getting iron and it's getting those nutrients dense. So B12 is in there as well. Sure. If you don't mind a little bit more earthy taste in your, yeah, with liver. I mean, we like heart. Heart is really good. We've never eaten the adrenals or the kidneys, but you could do that as well. The adrenals are two little triangular organs that sit right on top of the kidneys in humans. I don't know what it looks like. You guys could probably, do they have adrenals? Well, they have to have adrenals. They have adrenals. It's just they tend to be, if you look for the animal's kidney, they typically sit right on top of the kidney. And they're tiny. I mean, I don't know, maybe an elk adrenal's huge, but they're tiny. They're tiny in us. Okay, thyroid panel. Now, conventional medicine does this. We're just going to run TSH. If your TSH comes back normal, you're fine. Your thyroid's fine. Well, that's not really the best way, because TSH is the hormone in the brain that tells the thyroid, okay, make thyroid hormone. And then you make thyroid hormone, and then you make another thyroid hormone, and then there's a feedback loop that says you got enough thyroid hormone, and TSH goes down. Okay, it's a feedback loop. That's how all your hormones work. TSH can be normal, and your T3, which is your active thyroid hormone, which gives you like energy, can be low. And if they don't test your free T3, your free T4, and sometimes reverse T3 if people have adrenal issues. This is the one, the feedback loop one. So this could be normal, this is low, or this is normal and this is low because you don't convert. You have to convert from T4 to T3 with things like selenium, iodine, B vitamins. You don't have enough of those, your thyroid's not going to work. If you don't eat enough meat and amino acids, you don't have enough stomach acid. You can't break down proteins into peptides and into amino acids. You don't get enough tyrosine. Tyrosine is the precursor to thyroid hormone. Okay? So again, I am not an advocate for a plant-based diet. Why? Because now, you can do it without animal products. You really can. You got to work really, really hard. But most vegetarians are eating all those carbohydrates that you see up there on that board, and that's causing insulin resistance. And a lot of people are vegetarian based on ethical issues, and I realize that. But in order to have healthy hormonal function throughout your life, you need a lot of nutrients that come from animal products that we just talked about. It's just how it is. So, and also selenium is pretty much, it's in animal products, also in soil. And like the vegetables our grandparents were eating had a lot more selenium in them than ours do now because the topsoil's destroyed. So a lot of people have to supplement with selenium. You just can't get it from plants like we used to anymore, unless you have really good topsoil. You know, you had a garden for 20 years and it's organic and you've cultivated it. Okay, let's see. Guys, testosterone, both men and women, total testosterone. Free testosterone. Can someone tell me the difference? Your wife's a doctor. Just kidding. Yeah, okay, so you have this thing called albumin, which is your main blood protein, okay? That's shown in this panel right here. It'll tell me how much albumin you have. Then you have what's called sex hormone binding globulin. So this is the analogy I tell guys. If you're in New York City and you need to get somewhere, you gotta take a cab. You flag down a cab, you get in a cab, and you get in there, and all of a sudden there's no door handles. You can't get out of the cab. Like, the driver says to you, "Welcome to my cab," you will never get out, okay? That's sex hormone binding globulin. So if your testosterone molecule and you're floating around and you get in that cab, you will never get out of that cab, which means you are useless. You are never going to be able to be attached to a receptor to be used by the body, okay? So most of all your testosterone gets in that cab, and albumin's like the, who are the guys that ride the bike? You get in their little thing and you ride the bike? Rickshaw. So albumin's like a rickshaw. You get in that, but you can get out if you want, okay? If your body needs some testosterone, it can kind of let it go and you can get out. Now, free T is really low compared to total. So you want to have a range of, well, I'm going to give you what I think you should have. You should have 900 to 1100 testosterone. Okay? That's your total. And you want your free to be over 18. You don't see this in anybody naturally these days. Okay? This is what your grandpa had. I have an 82-year-old man who came in. We did some hormones with him because he's 82. His total was 650. I see 25-year-old guys that are half of that. Okay? So if you're not at this and your free is, most guys are coming in, their free is under 7. You don't feel good. You don't feel right. And if your TSH is off and your free T3 is low, not going to feel good either. So that's what you want to be. Let's see, B12, thyroid. Age is 1. So men over 40, they're at 30, testosterone declines 1% per year. I beg it's probably a little more than that. I would differ with that. But over 40, definitely over 50. I would say men definitely go through an andropause. We don't talk about it because you don't have like your ovaries going to sleep and it's not like you just stop making testosterone, right? You couldn't live without that. But you do go down and you'll notice men, they do go through an andropause where their hormones change. And so that's the, I think too, we're living longer. So 100 years ago, the lifespan of the average man was 50 and the average lifespan of a woman was 52. Okay, so women had a bunch of kids, hit 52, died. They didn't even get into menopause. So you weren't thinking about that. Men were dead before that, okay? Sad statistic, those are still the death rates on Indian reservations. The average lifespan of a man who lives in Rosebud, South Dakota is 49 years old. And that's not because he's had it is because he's had a long, hard life. But they deal with drug addiction, suicide, murder, that kind of stuff. But there are still places where people are living that long. So if you want to live to be 80, And your body, your testes are just in your brain kind of slow down talking to each other. You know, you're gonna have 30 or 40 years of just feeling suboptimal. And so there's the question of, is this natural? Now, I would say yes, of course, it's natural, but you probably weren't designed to live 90 years initially. But we're seeing that evolutionary, we might be changing that, right? Just science in general, what we can see now, we can look into your DNA, we can see how long your telomere length is. We can we can basically tell you what your biological age is now compared to your chronological age by looking at methylation in your cells, in your DNA. So that's really cool. That's all fine and dandy. But if you want to live to be hiking mountains at 80 years old, it's stacked against you based on just the way we age in general. So it is natural, but I kind of like to think that the way the world is now, we can help that. You don't have to suffer and feel horrible and just think that that's the way it is. But you're still going to age, you know?
How are you treating that? Injections or putting?
Yeah, so if you're young, if you're under 40, because you still want to have a family probably. You still want to have children. So I don't just give testosterone to every guy who comes in and wants it. And the other thing is a lot of guys think, oh, I need testosterone. I'm tired. Well, as you can see, there's lots of hormones up there. We check it all. I'm not just going to give you testosterone because that's what you think you need. But if you're older, yeah, and like I said, you know, if you got a 280 testosterone, you probably got a free of 4. So you're not going to feel good, right? But if you're 20, I'm not going to give that to you. We're going to work on lifestyle. We're going to work on exposures. We're going to work on diet. We're going to give you nutrient-dense foods. We're going to make sure you're exercising. Most guys don't exercise. They exercise 30 minutes a day at the gym, taking selfies of themselves and Instagram posts. They're not actually working out. And after doing Dan's workout yesterday, how many of us have problems? We're super strong in one area and we're not in another. I mean, my partner said to me yesterday, I realized all I do is I'm really good at the workout I know how to do. Everything outside of that, I suck at it, right? So Dan was right yesterday. You got to push yourself to actually be physically capable throughout your life to do the many things that you need to do. And most people just aren't doing that. So, let's see. Oh, yes, thank you. Lipids. Yes, this is really important. So, lipid status would be triglycerides, LDLs, HDLs, total cholesterol. Triglycerides will go high if you're eating too much sugar and if you're drinking alcohol. So, I ask you, why are your triglycerides 350? They should be under 150. Well, I don't know. Are you eating sugar? Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit. Do you drink alcohol? Oh, no, I never drink alcohol. If you're lying to me, there's an enzyme I can check called GGT. GGT only goes up in certain liver disorders and alcoholism, people that drink too much. And so triglycerides will go up when you drink too much. Triad: high triglycerides, elevated blood sugars, and your BMI, I think. There. So again, the spare tire, all that kind of stuff. LDLs, HDLs, we'll just talk about that for a little bit because, you know, keto is a big thing. So how many in here do people do keto? What?
Paleo.
Okay, paleo. How many do paleo? Okay. So how many do carnivore? Okay. Carnivore is like the new thing, right? Everybody wants to do carnivore. And people think, how can you just live off of meat? Well, you know, if you eat too much protein, you eventually turn it into carbohydrates. So that's how you get carbohydrates. Your body will make blood sugar from it. Some of these guys that are doing true carnivore, they have LDLs of over 500, okay? Like most cardiologists you went to, if you had a 500 LDL, they would be like, statin, straight in the vein, right now, you know, that kind of thing. But some of these guys are getting, so if you had that and you were worried about cardiovascular disease, you can get a CT scan, which is a calcium score, okay? calcium score tells us how much actual plaque, it's an image of your vessels in your heart, tells us how much plaque you have. A lot of these guys, they have clean arteries, okay? So the theory that LDL is causing cardiovascular disease is starting to get debunked, okay? It's kind of the idea back in the day, I think the sugar industry went through the same kind of thing. Oh, what was it? You need margarine instead of butter. Like, it's healthier for you. What? Yeah. Yes, yes. And so now as physicians, you start to wonder, like, everybody comes in with weird LDLs and this kind of thing. And, you know, it's really about lifestyle, asking the questions. And you can titrate those LDLs. So if you have a cholesterol panel that's off and your LDLs are really high and your doctor wants to put you on a statin, I would request what's called a fractionated lipid panel, okay? That fractionated lipid panel is going to break down those LDLs, and it's going to tell you how much of the actual inflammatory LDL you have. Not just total LDL, because there's different types of LDL. So you need that, and probably all of you at some point will probably end up getting that, but that's what I would request for sure, a fractionated LPL. If your hormones are low, your lipids will be higher. If you're insulin resistant, your lipids will be higher. So it's so typical. I have a guy come in, we do HRT, we do lifestyle, we clean up their metabolic disease, their lipids normalize. And I didn't put them on a statin, okay?
Just when these high meat diets, don't people worry about colon cancer?
Carnivore. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the type of meat. I think it's how you cook your meat. A lot of those guys are eating like raw meat. And they're eating like bone marrow, and they're eating organ meats, and they're eating tallow, and they're like, so I think they may be getting enough of those nutrient-dense antioxidants and vitamins that are maybe helping them with that. But yeah, I don't know. Colon cancer is definitely, it's those glycosylated products when you barbecue. The Traeger's kind of nice because the Traeger kind of slowly smokes your meat and kind of does that. That's what I liked about it since we've got it. The birch barrels are nice too, but they're harder to cook on when you first learn. But think about how we used to barbecue. Just get it on there and burn it and grill it. That's those products when you burn meat like that is what can cause that problem. Okay, so these are just some of the basics, okay? These are the basics. They don't cost a whole lot. If you want, you can get those done. And if you have questions, you can ask me. So I'm going to kind of finish my part here, and then if you have questions, you can ask. All of this is really important, and it, you know, unless you've got a health problem, it may not be that big of a deal to you right now. None of this may be interested to you, but I think the number one thing that's important is having purpose, okay? Like, what is your purpose? And I feel like today a lot of people don't have purpose. And this is what I deal with mainly with patients. We can fix your hormones, we can fix your diet, we can improve your insulin resistance. If you don't have purpose, you don't like what you do in life, you're not happy, your relationship sucks, it's really, really hard to make these things work, okay? And we got a letter last year about, you know, when we put this out, the Western Hunting Summit, I got an email, okay? And I want to read that email to you today. Because my purpose for a very long time, since I was young, my purpose was to be sharing this kind of stuff with people. Even though I didn't really know what it was my purpose. So my purpose in the hunting industry, which is kind of crazy to say, because 10 years ago I would have been like, no. Is like, I want this population to be the advocates for health. Not the people that people look down on as stupid rednecks and you don't care about your health and you're just, you know, this and that, truck hunters, blah. I don't care. You know, you can hunt however you want. But when I said earlier, when I look around this room, this is a small microcosm of what could be in this industry. And when you're talking about getting the best meat on the planet, working hard, climbing mountains, being in the best shape, having the mental mindset, all the things that my husband talks about, it's like, we should be the role models for the health industry, not the people in the health industry who've never done and experienced what you guys have done. So for me, my purpose is to help people in this industry get healthier and be able to do these things for longer, because that makes you better people, and in turn that helps your family and future generations. So let me read this letter to you. This person is here in this room today, okay? So I'll read this to you. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Lampers, I'm going to try to keep this letter short, but will likely fail. I wish to tell you a little bit about myself so you understand why I believe I owe you a debt of gratitude. I'm 51 years old, happily married for over 30 years to a great and supportive wife. I have 2 children who are grown and making successful lives for themselves. I worked in law enforcement for 24 years and I retired this past January. My hunting experience began when my father took me deer hunting when I was 6 years old. Since that time, I have hunted all over the western United States and Canada for everything from big game to predator to birds. All of my hunting has been done from base camps, making day trips away from camp. I have only done one backcountry hunt, which was for archery elk, but only stayed for 3 days in the backcountry. I've been fortunate to be physically healthy for all my life other than weight issues. This, I believe, has been caused by a combination of inconsistent diet and exercise. Over the last 24 years, I have at times been very dedicated to my workout and diet, but the times when I haven't been have led to me being overweight most of my adult life. I have lived a very blessed and happy life up to this point, with one very big chink in my armor. Working in law enforcement for 24 years has led to some health and psychological issues to deal with. During my career, I worked in many different parts of law enforcement, including narcotics, schools, investigations, and as a training officer. I've had very rewarding experiences, but I've also been involved in some things that I see now are very damaging. The last 5 years of my career, I was a homicide detective, which involved seeing and dealing with some of the worst things imaginable. About a year before I retired, I recognized the psychological damage that was being done and I retired. I believed that once I was out, everything would be okay. I've drank beer socially most of my life, but never to excess. After I retired, I started drinking more. I convinced myself I needed to relax, to sleep. And because I could, I was in a very dark place. I went from drinking a little every once in a while to drinking every day. The quantity also went up till I was drinking 12 to 18 beers every day. The breaking point came in August, this is of last year, during an archery deer hunt. Opening weekend, I had my wife and family in camp and everything was normal. My wife and family all had to leave after the weekend for work, and because I'm retired, I was able to stay for the week. We had scouted a couple of quality bucks over the summer, which I located opening day. Me and the wife watched these bucks for the first 2 days, but they had not yet presented a stock opportunity. I was excited to spend the week alone waiting for an opportunity. My wife left after the morning hunt on Monday. After seeing her off, I had a couple hours to kill before hiking in, so I decided to have a beer and read a book. One turned into 2, which turned into me sitting in camp till 11 o'clock at night. After drinking over 30 beers, I stumbled into bed. The next morning, I woke up too hungover to get out of bed. Around noon, I decided to go for a drive and around the mountains to clear my head. I ended up on top of a ridge where I got cell service, so I began searching for a podcast. That's when I stumbled on the Hunt and Harvest Health podcast. Over the week, I listened to almost every podcast you had done. These podcasts helped me to recognize that I have a drinking problem. I also learned from listening to your inspiring words that this problem, along with my health, could be fixed with diet, exercise, and some new goals. One of my top goals was to increase my experience in the outdoors and to continue this for many years. Because of your inspiration, since that day, I have improved my diet and exercise and have stopped drinking. Because of this, I have noticed that my mood has improved and I don't seem to spend as much time in the dark space of my mind. I'm sleeping better with fewer dreams of past visions. When I got home from this hunt, I weighed 240 pounds. My goal is to be down to 180 pounds before September. I recently signed up for the Western Hunting Summit Elk Camp and am working hard to be in good enough shape to not embarrass myself on the mountain. I recognize that the mountain portion of the camp may be too advanced for a 51-year-old fat man, but I do intend to show up in best shape possible. I truly believe that the path I was headed down would have ended my time in the mountains and on this earth, in the not too distant future. Thanks for your inspiration and wisdom. I'm hoping for many more years. You truly have made a difference. Thank you, Ryan Reed. So you are all in the presence of greatness here, and purpose. And sometimes you don't know how you influence people. So what I would just love to say is that whatever you have to share, share it. It's really important. And your purpose is really important. And so I want to thank you, Ryan, for that letter. It changed me. And I get a lot of letters like that. And I want to thank all of you guys for sharing yourselves and being here. It means a lot to Ryan and I. So thanks for being here.
The Hunt Harvest Health Podcast and the StHealthy Hunter LLC, its managers and partners, we do not diagnose, prescribe, or replace the services of a healthcare professional. This podcast is not to be used as a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment of any health condition or problem, and any questions regarding your health should be addressed to your primary care physician or other healthcare provider. Remember, I am a doctor, but I'm not your doctor.